everyone, it's Shannon here. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to create this Mother's Day card with the awesome Spring Blooms Stencil-n-Stamp set from Waffle Flower Crafts. I'm going to go away from my norm of bright, bold colors and try a muted palette for today's card. Let's start by taking a look at the Stencil-n-Stamp Spring Blooms set. This set includes the Spring Blooms stamp set as well as the matching stencils that help you add color to that bouquet of flowers. I'm going to open it up here and pull out the stamp set. The stamp set has kind of your base image, which includes the picture that the flowers are in, as well as some singular stamps that you can stamp to kind of add to the bouquet if you choose. And then here are the stencils for the set. Now these stencils will help you color all the flowers in the set. I really love using stencils for this. It's just really a fun way to add color in a really quick and easy way. The stencils have a number. There's 2 stencils, but each stencil is divided in half. And I'm kind of pointing out that they are labeled with like what color it's suggested to use for that half. And I think that's really helpful too, for especially the first time you're just trying to get your bearings of how those stencils work and how they and what colors to use. There is also a matching die, which is super handy. I'm going to be using the die today. You don't have to have the die to create a beautiful flower, but I think it's super helpful. So I went ahead and die cut the bouquet first out of some white cardstock, and then I am going to place that negative and the die cut back in or back together and then inside my MISTI. This is going to make it a lot easier to make sure all my flowers are arranged appropriately on that die cut, because I want a die cut bouquet when I'm done, because I want to put these flowers on top of a colored sheet of cardstock. It's really important that everything lines up because I want that die cut to be perfect. So I've arranged or aligned up my stamp according to the die cut, and now I'm just going to go ahead and stamp it. I first inked it up in Bundled Sage Distress ink. I did stamp it a couple times to get it nice and dark, and now I'm going to move on to Peeled Paint, which is a kind of a darker shade, and I'm going to swipe it over the picture and making sure I get the edges really and not kind of the interior. This is going to add a really cool kind of texture, almost like a weathered watering can, and it'll also add a little shadowing. So I'm just focusing on the edges of that picture for that, and that really has a cool kind of dimensional effect as well as adding some texture. So we're going to start with stencil 1. I'm going to line up the first half because each stencil is divided kind of in half, just with a kind of score line. So we're going to start with the first half here, line it up with the flowers, and for this first grouping of flowers, I'm going to ink blend them in Antique Linen. So yep, a pretty different color. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I'm trying a more muted palette, and I actually really love how this turned out. One thing I'm really enjoying right now, and I'm thinking about buying, is a bouquet of dried flowers. And I just think this I really wanted to do this bouquet in that kind of similar tone. So it's really pretty soft, muted colors. So now I moved over to the second half, and I'm going to ink blend all these flowers in shaded lilac. Now this half is actually divided. You can do 2 colors. If you look at the stencil, it'll say like light teal and then dark pink. I'm just going to do them all in shaded lilac, just make it simpler. Now I'm on to stencil 2 now, and the first half of stencil 2 has 2 different sections. So the top half lines up for one grouping of the flowers, and then the bottom half of this half of the stencil lines up for another grouping. I'm going to grab a couple pieces of micro pour tape off the top. Definitely want to make sure you get the top so you kind of mask and protect that top grouping of flowers. And then I'll ink blend these in Fossilized Amber, a really pretty kind of mustardy yellow. Once I finish that, I'll remove the tape. Then I'll align the bottom half of that half of the stencil for the next grouping of flowers. Again, use my micro pour tape to kind of mask as well as kind of hold the stencil and the paper in place. And for this, I'm using Faded Jeans and ink blending that grouping of flowers. So now that I finished that, I actually only have one final section to go. This is actually some greenery, not really any flowers. I'll line this half up, and then I will ink blend all these leaves in Evergreen Bough, so a really pretty kind of blue-green color. Now that I finished that, I've I've finished all of my ink blending and my bouquet is complete. Isn't that pretty? I just love how these stencils and stamps work together for this set. Such a pretty bouquet. So I'm not going to stamp my sentiment. This sentiment is from the Tulips Stamp Set. It says Happy Mother's Day. I just stamped it on some scrap white cardstock in faded jeans distress ink. Did it a couple times to make sure it's nice and bold. Now there isn't a die for this, so I'm going to fussy cut this out. First I'll just kind of remove it from the large piece of scrap, and then I will just cut the top and bottom pieces first, because right along the happy in the day, because they're nice and linear and flat. And now I'm going to start to go around and really fussy cut this out, turning my sentiment here and there just to get a nice kind of shadow, or not shadow, I should say, a border around the sentiment. So now that this is all cut out, I'm actually ready to kind of put my card together. So I've already gone ahead and adhered kind of this tan cardstock to the top of an A2 top folding white card base. That's going to be my background. Now I'm going to take these scraps of craft foam. I save like all my little scraps of craft foam, especially when I die cut like a large panel and there's like negative pieces. I'll save those, and these are great. I'm just kind of piecing them together and adhering them to the back side of my bouquet. This will, of course, add a little bit of lift, so this bouquet kind of pops away from the background, just a fun little dimension. So I adhered those on. Now I just added glue to the back side, and it stuck that down onto my card front. I used a platform for my die cutting machine as kind of a weight to set that as the glue set up. And now I'm going to finish with my sentiment. Now my sentiment, I want to go over that bouquet and have a little bit of dimension. So to do that, I've stacked two little strips of cardstock together and adhered them to my sentiment. That's going to give it a little bit of lift, and then I will adhere a little bit of craft foam to the edge where it hangs off of the bouquet, so it's not touching the bouquet, and that's going to make that section kind of level with the bouquet, but that our two strips of cardstock will make it kind of pop up a little bit more away from the bouquet. And that will actually complete my card. I'll hold it up to the camera here so you can get a good look at this beautiful, really simple bouquet to make. And I love this muted palette. So very different for me, still getting used to it, but I can't wait to try some more combos, especially in that muted kind of range. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you have any questions about the products I used, please check out the links below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.